Hello, my name is Sylvester Henderson. I am the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated, and I'm also a full professor for Los Medanos Community College, located in Pittsburgh, California. I am so honored today to have an opportunity to speak with Dr. Hakim Adi, who is a professor at Chichester University, located in Great Britain. So I want to say welcome, Dr. Adi.
It's great to be with you. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Could you please introduce yourself to the digital media academic world? Describe your work and obligations as a full professor of history at Chichester University, and what areas have you overseen or do you oversee?
Yeah, that's fairly straightforward. My title is Professor of the History of Africa and the African Diaspora. I think I'm probably the only professor in Britain that combines the history of Africa with the African diaspora, certainly one of very few. I was the first person of African heritage to become a full professor of history in Britain. I have taught a range of courses at the University of Chichester as well as other universities in Britain. In recent years, I have been responsible for a unique online master's program, Masters by Research, or MRes as we call it here, in the history of Africa and the African diaspora, which unfortunately has been terminated by my present university.
Now, can you explain to our digital world, in Great Britain, what does it mean to become a full professor? And what are some of the steps that you had to journey to obtain that actual title?
Well, that's like my whole life story. That's a long story, but essentially, normally, to become a full professor, you would need a first degree and then a PhD, and you would need to have taught from number of years, usually maybe about 15 or 20 years of teaching experience. You would be expected to have had significant publications, both in terms of scholarly journals, books, articles, as well as conference presentations. And you would be expected to, contribute to the life of the university. It's probably very similar to what a full professor would do in the US. We do have some people in this country who are given the title full professors on the basis of their kind of professional experience. So they might have been journalists, for example, who the university considers have a body of work which is similar to the work that we academics do. And I'm not going to make any comment on whether that work is actually comparable, but some people are given that title of professor on that basis. But normally, you need to have done all the things that I've just outlined that you should do.
So you basically said, in other words, you need to be a pretty smart person and have put a lot of dedication into what you've done and have specific skills around the subject area, which brings me to another question. Could you explain how your Masters of Research in Africa, and the African Diaspora interacted with the University of Great Britain and the international world, in a sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that Masters by Research, or MRes for short, was an online course, meaning that it could be taken by students all over the world. It was launched from the University of Chichester in 2018, and we used to run the program twice a year. So we recruited students in September, but also in January. And it was a program that was originally established to encourage older students, when I say older, mature students, maybe above the age of 25, to encourage them to come back to academia to train as historians. In this country, we have a kind of paucity of Black historians. Young people of African and Caribbean heritage are alienated from history because it's often presented in a Eurocentric manner. and other people are similarly alienated. So we set up this master's course to encourage people who may have done a different first degree or may not even have a first degree to come back, to train as historians, to carry out some research, because it's examined by a research project of 25,000 words, and with the hope that they would go on to continue to be historians, and that some of them would undertake PhD courses in this country as a result of their studies. So that was the aim of the MRes, and I think that we have fulfilled that aim, in the sense that in the 4 or 5 years we've been running, we produced 7 PhD students. 7 students have gone on to do PhDs, 1 in the United States, the other 6 at my university, the University of Chichester. 5 of those students are still taking their PhDs. 1 successfully completed her PhD about a month ago. So we think it was I personally think it was a very successful program.
Now this sounds kind of crazy, but why is this program important? Not only to the world of academia, but to the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to the principles around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, it's important because, as I explained, we have a problem that young, or people in general in this country, people of African and Caribbean heritage, are not well represented in the history profession. At the same time, perhaps a bit like the US, lots of people are very interested in history. If you go to any community, particularly communities of people of African heritage in Britain, you will find all kinds of community projects, murals, various types of courses. People are interested in history for the very obvious reasons, that it's about people's existence and identity, and also because of the way history has been presented in a Eurocentric manner in the past, and Africans and people of African heritage have been excluded from that history or denied their history and so on. So history is something which many people are very passionate about, but they tend to become alienated from the way that history is presented in schools and universities because it's very Eurocentric. So the course was set up to try and deal with some of those problems. And it is really the only course in Britain which trains people at that level, at master's level, which encourages people who may not have a degree to come and study and learn to be historians, which encourages people to study the history of African and Caribbean people in Britain, which is also a subject which is not well developed in Britain and needs greater development. So the course is unique. It's doing a unique job that needs to be done. And we've found that people in other countries, the US, Canada, and other places where maybe there are similar issues with history, they have also been drawn to the course. So it's very important to have such a program. If it goes, and it is essentially, it's probably gone because the university have suspended recruitment to it, we have no other master's program in what popularly people would call Black history. There is no other master's program in Britain on this subject. And indeed, really at undergraduate level, there are, there is no degree program in that area, in that history either. So it's really problematic that this program has been cut. More importantly, we're losing a training program for future historians. Some of the historians which have come out of that program have book contracts. Some of them have already published articles in scholarly journals or peer-reviewed books and so on. So we were training historians as well as providing a history course, and that has now been taken away.
In addition to what you are saying, I want to just simply add that your program also supported intellectual curiosity, and especially around people of color of the African descent, And that has been an issue that is a matter that is being challenged at many colleges and universities throughout the entire United States as well currently in our political market. Let me ask you another question, sir. How do you feel about the university's decision to eliminate your program that really supports DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I'm very displeased about it, you could say, or you could say that I'm extremely angry about it. As I said, the university is basically turned, 180 degrees from a position of supporting this aim and even boasting about this aim of providing such a course, training historians, recruiting students in the way that I have and the course has. Not only are they targeting this course and have effectively eliminated this course, they are now also linking my post, my career, my employment to this master's program. So they're saying, okay, this master's program did not recruit enough students for our liking. Because it didn't, that means your post is going to be made redundant. So not only am I angry about the termination of the course, I'm even more angry about my own termination, or the termination of my post, and the way it has been done. It's like a kind of sleight of hand. Normally in a university, if a course closes, they say, okay, well, you should go and teach something else, or you should become, In my case, they haven't said that. They haven't said, okay, well, you should teach something else, or you should become part of the teaching of some other part of the history degree which is offered at the university, or you should develop another course, or you should do something. No. Essentially, they have said to me, okay, you are, in their own words, a world-renowned historian, one of the leading historians of maybe the leading historian of Pan-Africanism in the world. You have done this, you've done it. Okay, you need to reinvent yourself in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you need to reinvent yourself. We don't want a person who is an expert in the history of Africa and the African diaspora. We don't want a person who is a leader in their field. We don't want a person who has produced, one of the most significant books on the history of African and Caribbean people in Britain. We don't want that. We want you to become something else. And you need to become that something else in 2 weeks. If you do not become that something else, we will sack you. That is what they are saying. And obviously this is essentially a policy to what we call in Britain constructive dismissal. They are creating the conditions where it's impossible for me to meet these conditions. They are making me redundant, but they are somehow claiming that it's my responsibility. And if I don't reinvent myself, well, it's my fault. It's nothing to do with them. My post will be made redundant. It's got nothing to do with them. It's just, one of those things. This is what's going on. So if something like that does not make you angry, then nothing will make you angry.
Dr. Adi, my heart goes out to you for your life mission and work, because I understand the struggle of working in a system that does not support not just you, but thoughts of diversity, people, value, cultural validation. How can let me back with my next question. I want to interject this because this seems to align with our Supreme Court's decision to eliminate affirmative action, which has made the country of America quite crazy. I don't look at this in America as a big issue. Are you Republican or are you Democratic? I kind of look at many of these decisions as, are you human? Not your political alignment, but your, I would say, your humanity and civility. How can a country eliminate a group of interest from a group of people. And when you do that, in essence, what you're doing is that you are eliminating the people. You are eliminating them and telling them that there is no value for who they are. And that regardless of all of our laws, policies, and practices, we don't support you. So do you feel that America, or some of the political climates in America around higher education, some of the things that's happening in Florida around higher education, if you know of, do you feel that this has impacted your university or Great Britain in any regard?
I'm not sure if it directly had impact, but it's part of the same problem. The issue there is, we can call it Eurocentrism, which makes it sound, maybe hides to some extent what it is. It certainly is Eurocentrism. I think on a more basic level, we would say it was racism. What people are saying is, okay, people of African heritage and their history, their experience is not important. It's not important. You are not important. This is where we have come from the last 500 years of fighting against this notion of Eurocentrism, that only Europe matters, only things of European origin matters, only people of European origin matters. But this is what is happening today. People are saying your history doesn't matter. And in my university's case, they've got a statement, I can't remember it exactly, but they said something about your subject does not fit into our new orientation of generalist degrees. So what does that mean, generalist degrees? That means we are educating young people in a certain way in which they do not need to know about Africa or people of African heritage. Africa, the second largest continent in the world, the birthplace of humanity, and people of African descent who, one doesn't even have to say it here, who have played all the roles that people of African heritage have played in history. The university is saying we do not need that history, that experience, that contribution to human development. We do not need that in our university. That is what they're saying quite clearly to me. Now, when I first joined the university, it had that kind of history program. It was, British history, it was European history, it had this very Eurocentric focus, lack of diversity. I widened it. I brought my expertise to it. And in the first semester that I taught at this university in 2012, I ran a module for first year undergraduates, just come to university. I ran a program called Africa and the African Diaspora in the Modern World. That particular course looked at African history, it looked at the history of enslavement, it looked at African American history, it looked at the history of the Caribbean, and it looked at the history of Britain, all in one 12-week course. In my first semester, that course was voted by the students, who were all white students. They voted that module of the year, or course of the year, in my first semester at the university. Why did they do that? Because they said, wow, we never heard this history before. We didn't learn this at school. Wow, isn't this interesting? Isn't this exciting? Isn't this great to know? That was their attitude towards that particular course. As you'd expect any young person probably would have that attitude. In other words, they understood the value of this history to their own experience, their own knowledge, their own understanding of the world, which is why people study. But the university is saying, no, young people at our university do not need to understand this aspect of history. So I am extremely angry about that. So I'm getting a call coming through, but I can't get rid of it. I'm extremely angry about that. That to me is essentially a kind of racist outlook, a Eurocentric outlook, saying that people and their history do not matter on the one hand, and that young people, whatever their background, do not need to know that history in our generalist degrees. That's what the university is saying. So it makes me very angry. And of course, the other aspect of it is that for people of color, people of African and Caribbean heritage, it is directly saying, well, you don't matter. Your history doesn't matter. What you've contributed to the world, whether it's in Britain, whether it's in the US, whether it's in the Caribbean, whether it's in Africa, it's in Asia, wherever it doesn't, we don't really care. We don't need that. We don't want that. And we don't want you. We do not want you, because this course, the Masters by Research in Africa and the African Diaspora, brought Black students to a university which was predominantly white. To me, they are saying, well, we don't want that. Even though a year ago or 2 years ago, they were saying, wow, look at us, look what we're doing. Now they are saying, we don't want that. We don't need that. We don't care about that. So yeah, I'm not happy.
You know, you've talked about the word racism, and I'm glad that you actually said that, because unfortunately, Dr. Adi, America promotes racism in the academic world, in the social world, in almost every aspect of life as well. But I don't want to spend any more effort on that, because that's a separate show. And a man with your schedule, I'm grateful that you took the time, because we could talk about that all day. How can, oh God, yes. How can American professors support your effort to rally around and ask your university to reconsider this foolish decision that they've made?
Well, we have my students, and I should, just before I answer that question, I should just say something about my students. I have 10 PhD students, several, maybe 6, half a dozen master's students. If I am made redundant, the only person at the university to have expertise in the history of Africa and the African diaspora, what is going to happen to these students? Some of them are midway through their PhD program or just beginning their PhD program. So I really feel, and I'm really very concerned about what is going to happen to those students. And my impression is that the university hasn't even given that any consideration. So that is very, very important in all of this, not to forget the students who are affected today. I should say, as well as the students who have been affected by the closure of the course. In the last few days, I've had several people write to me saying, wow, I was really looking forward to this course. I was looking forward to joining in September. This is the course I wanted to do. I just hadn't enrolled before, but I was going to do it this year. What has happened? 2, 3, 4 people who have said to me, and I feel for them as well, because there's no other course in Britain that provides what we provided. So my students, I'm very proud to say, have launched a petition. It's on the change.org website. The easiest way of getting to it is to go to change.org and just search by my name, Hakim Adi, and you will find that petition. You can sign it. You can also find it on the History Matters website. That's historymatters.online, and then you go to the blog section and you will find the petition there. Or even easier, you can go to my own website, hakimadi.org. Just go into it, and the first thing you'll see will be a bar. You can just click on the bar, it will take you to the petition straight away. So there's 3 ways of getting to the petition and signing, and you can leave a comment, and we're trying to circulate the comments as well on social media that people make. if people want to do anything else, they're at liberty to do whatever they think they can do to bring pressure to bear on the university. I should say that one of our politicians here in this country has tried to assist. She, in fact, even put a motion before the British Parliament yesterday on this question, on the closure of this course. She is the chair of the All-Parliamentary Committee on Reparations, on African reparations, and she has tried to intervene by bringing it to the attention of other parliamentarians, and also by contacting the university and offering to work with the university, and she has various ideas about how things could be done. The university have refused to meet with her and to discuss with her at all. I also know that somebody else offered to help, and someone who has massive experience in marketing and recruitment offered to recruit at no cost for the university. They refused to even acknowledge her message. So they seem to be really determined to close the course and also to close my employment. And any way that people wish to support, we would all be very grateful for your support.
Wow. You said a mouthful, but I can assure you from the effort since I've met you a couple of days ago, and I've heard so many wonderful things about you for years, that I will definitely be circulating the petition and find a way to include the petition within this interview so that the viewers can find a way to support your program, or to support you just, sir, as a wonderful scholar and academic. You talked a lot about bias, cultural discrimination against people of color. You've even talked about another topic that I won't go into too much about, how the world, for whatever the reason here currently, and it's just not current, I should say, but it's been going on for years, for some reason continues to, this is strange to me, the world talks about love and equality, but it promotes injustice simultaneously. So it's like putting $5 in the bank and charging $10. You're negative $5.
That's exactly what it feels like.
And so this is so sad, but you've kind of talked about what are some of the strategies that you would recommend for the program viewers and listeners, what they could do to help reverse this decision or change this decision of cultural lack of validation. And can you discuss, just in our final couple of words I have, or questions I have, can you discuss, have you thought about what your life will be, and what are some of your goals that you have or you may have if you are forced to leave your post that means so much to you?
Well, I mean, the work that I do will continue. We will find a way. I don't know exactly how we will do it in terms of this particular course, but I did the same kind of work before this course existed, and I will do the same kind of work after it. I've taught in school, community college, prison, adult education centers, you name it, I've taught in it. So that I was even in teaching in the People's Forum in New York just a couple of weeks ago. So that will continue. My teaching will continue. My research and writing will continue. I'm planning to, I just put out a book last week. I have a book coming out in paperback published by Penguin in September. I'm planning to write another one soon. That will continue. And then my work with young people of color in particular. We have in Britain something we call the Young Historians Project, a project of young people between the ages of 16 and 25 of African or Caribbean heritage, which focuses on history projects, and on, again, encouraging young Black people to engage with history and to take what they find and to present it to their peers in documentary, in murals, in podcasts, in online exhibitions and so on. So that work with young people will also continue. We also have the History Matters initiative continues, that brings out a quarterly newsletter, which organizes conferences, which does all the things that History Matters does. All of that will continue. And there'll probably be other things that haven't happened yet that will continue in the future. And I should say to people they should look out for an important announcement in September. I can't say what it is, but there will be an important announcement in September. Okay. Look out for that.
Well, you know, one thing for sure, Dr. Adi, the university may have temporarily damaged the emotion, but they have not taken the soul.
Never.
Because the soul of who you are will live on forever. Before I give my final thoughts, do you have any ideas you would like to finally communicate?
I think I've said everything that I can think of.
Well, I'm gonna give my final thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to come over to this podcast for Professors for Life Incorporated. I think you are a wonderful, absolutely brilliant man, academic and scholar. Your dedication to the world of history, because history is so important, because it helps us validate our path, our life, both present and the future. It helps keep us alive as people of color, even as non-people of color. It helps promote civility, humanity, and it shares love through stories and alignments and family alignments and practices and procedures. I want to share from my heart to yours that I wish you nothing but the best. One of my greatest goals, I never shared this with you, that's why I asked you the question. I said, well, perhaps you may consider moving to the United States. And
I'm open to offers.
Okay, so you know what? We're going to have to look for you a position in some great university or college somewhere in the United States. Not that we are perfect, but maybe we will offer other challenge, but not this one.
Thank you so much for your offer and for your kind words and for inviting me onto the program and spending the time and also focusing on the kind of challenges that we're undertaking or we're experiencing here in Britain in the history field. And as you said, history that's why we say history matters. History is important for everybody, and very often the powers that be attempt to spread disinformation about our history, confusion about our history, hide our history, deny our history. And so for all human beings, understanding history not only helps us validate ourselves and our identity and so on, but actually helps us understand the world in which we live, and most importantly, helps us to change the world we live. Because one thing which history teaches us is that everything changes. No condition is permanent, and that human beings are the agents of that change. That if we understand what we're doing, if we get together, we can change any situation, whether it's a situation of enslavement or colonial rule or whatever, or segregation or intimidation, whatever. We can overcome and change any situation. And that's an extremely important lesson, which some people do not want us to understand. So we have to struggle and preserve and defend history, the teaching of history, the importance of history, and the truth of history at all times.
Well, as an agent of care from my heart to yours, I mail you nothing but love, concern, and care and admiration in all that you do. Remain blessed, stay positive, and we hopefully will have an opportunity to employ you back on this program soon, one day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you once again.